Hey guys, it's me. I. I have an IQ of 3, but leave it to me. Anyways, what if one day you suddenly wake up and realized you just got isekai'd in the game you were grinding? Yes, one of the typical isekai trope. But what's that? You're the villain. Oh ho ho. The first one I knew was Overlord, but I think it's getting overused now too. You became a girl. Okay. The game is not for kids. Oh, so it's A, and your ending as well. At least there is no amputee tag? But every tag is there. Domination loss, their tag, slave, group, public use, muscle, soul female, hairy, sweating, collar. In the start of this story, our protagonist is monologuing, saying that inside every game, the world is irrational. It delivers a thrill for the player's enjoyment. But countless people die far too easily. It is said that from a distance, people's lives seem like a comedy. But up close, they're a tragedy. We then see him in a full-shot view, and see that he has lost his legs. We then realized he was a former soldier who has lost his legs in a battle and is now disabled. He tripped on his chair, but thankfully fell down in his bed. He then says that ever since he became disabled, he became a wreck, got addicted to alcohol and cigarettes. He then thinks about how his life has become. It's not his fault that he became a cripple, but recognizes that what he has become right now is his fault. He then curses himself as he falls asleep. He then someone hears shouting. He opens his eyes as he questions the guy making a racket in the morning. He then wakes up, but says his head hurts and assumes he has a hangover. Then suddenly froze. He got surprised his hair became longer and turned brown. Then shouts loudly, which made the guy outside stiffen. He then questions what's going on. He questions why everything from his head to his voice is different. Then looks down and see that his balls went up his chest. Then realizes that he became a she. Big. Then looks further down and sees that she has 2 legs. She questions if this is a dream. Then touches herself and says that the sensations feels too real. She then got startled by the man shouting, calling out Halshul and asking if she's awake. She then questions herself if Halshul is her name. She confirms that she's awake and asks a moment since she just had woken up. The guy leaves, then assumes that he's probably her subordinate. She calms herself down, then thinks for a moment. She observes her surroundings. Basing on the architectural style, she's either in Mongolia or somewhere close to Central Asia. But all the object and furnitures though seems antiquated, which she never seen even when she got deployed to those areas. Then suddenly, a thought came to her mind and thinks that, did she maybe got reincarnated in another world? She again looks below. At her legs. She clenches her hand. Then slowly puts her feet down the floor. And finally stands up. She giggles. And became happy because she finally has 2 legs again. Chapter 2. After a while she finally put on some. Well, the average female armor that can take a ton of damage. She then thinks that, even now that she got reincarnated, she still ended up in a military-like occupation. She sighs and thinks that fate really is cruel. She then worries because she doesn't know what the original owner of the body is like. So now she should mind her speech and behavior so there won't be any problems. She calls for the person waiting outside to come in. As the person comes in, she noticed something and became terrified as she sees that the man is very tall and menacing. She sweats and got frightened because he looks like someone who could eat her. Even when she was in the military, she's never seen a guy who looked as ferocious as him. The guy then took a knee, then bows down, then got relieved because her assumption is right that she's in charge. She asks him why he came here this morning. The man apologizes and reasons that she hasn't given orders regarding the prisoners they captured yesterday. She asks about the prisoners. He tells her that there are 20 young men and 32 women. And the younger women, as per her previous orders, were made to serve the warriors. But the women are safe right now because the warriors didn't want girls that couldn't ride horses. What is standard? Then asks if they should sell them all as slaves. She freezes for a moment, then got terrified about the word serving warriors and the slaves. She realizes that they are the bad guys and she is the leader of it. She's scared but still thinks of a way to not let it happen. She questions if it's really necessary to sell them. The guy hesitates for a moment, then confirms it. She then asks again, cutely this time. But what came out is a terrifying aura asking if he really thinks it's necessary. The man got scared seeing her and immediately bows down, telling her there's no need to sell them. She became happy, then asks his subordinate to guide and send those prisoners back to their families then, since we have no use for them, which made the man more scared. The man promised to follow her orders, then tells her that he would relay her order to the warriors. She asks if there's anything else he has to say. He tells her that they are preparing to return, so the attendants will soon come to clean her yurt. If anyone wondering what a yurt is, it's basically a sturdy tent that's used in Central Asia and particularly Mongolia. She then exhales as she sits down on her bed. Thankfully, she managed to get through it, but she's still the leader of these bad guys. She thinks about her next actions and questions herself on how to fix this. Then suddenly, she hears something. She questions the people screaming outside all of a sudden. Then freezes. She ran outside. Opens the tent. Then what she saw are things I cannot really show here, but there's a lot of blood and people screaming, begging to be spared. The sudden screams and suffocating smell of blood. Not only did her legs came back, she also came back to hell. Chapter 3. We then see an aerial view of the whole thing. She then narrates that seeing someone die isn't really new to her. She was once a soldier after all. But maybe because she haven't seen and smelled that metallic scent of blood for a long time. Or maybe because she's been too caught up in the battlefield that she really didn't took it in properly. Right now, she's getting nauseated looking at everything, but forces herself to not throw up because they definitely know that she's an imposter. Somebody then called out to her. A man asking if she's all right. She tells him she's fine, then asks what exactly is going on here. He just replies that they're dealing with the prisoners as she ordered. She questions what her order was. And questioned that didn't she told Captain Johan that they'd be sent to their families? She takes a moment. Then realizes they probably already took the life of all their families, and when she ordered that, they took it as they should also take their life to meet their families in the other side. She's frustrated with their twisted logic, but calms herself down because right now, she'll become suspicious if she get mad. She tells the guy that she actually did ordered Captain Johan to do that, and reasons that she must have been half asleep ordering it. The man laughs and reasons that she drunk 5 bottles of that strong alcohol last night. While the guy is still laughing that their captain can actually be inattentive at times, we see that she's still frustrated about the whole thing. After a while, she came back out again and see that they cleaned up all the bodies quickly. After the attendant gave the bottle to her, she asks her Lady Ishanger if there's anything else she needs. She tells her none. Then finally knows her full name. Ishanger Halshul, which is hard to pronounce. Then she finally remembers something. The great warrior Johan. And Hercella the Mad. They were all the bosses in the game she played called War of Remnant. A strategic RPG adult game that was somewhat popular. And that explains her unrealistic clothes. But now that she knows where she's reincarnated at, she says she spent around 200 hours playing it. The story is roughly entering the Remnant Academy, which trains the heroes. And the protagonist gets stronger and saves the world. A typical story trope. But what it boasted about is an excellent gameplay, which is a high degree of freedom. And high quality. I will censor what she's imagining, but basically, it has penetration. Then realizes something bad. She's a female character. She's pretty much screwed, and terrifyingly might be physically too. Chapter 4. They started to return back to their tribe. And while riding a horse, she's recalling what her role was. Ishanger Halshul, alias Hercella the Mad. Okay, I'm going to call her Hercella now because the name Halshul is a foreign and unique name. It feels like a typo every time I write it in my script. Alright, back to the story. She's the boss of the 3rd chapter in the game. She leads the nomadic tribe to invade the empire. And she is the toughest boss in the game. And when she played it herself, she spent almost the entire day just to beat her and costed her a broken keyboard in the process. She also has a backstory of her losing her mother at a young age. She's pretty much a girl with mommy issues. But the most important point is that no matter what path she takes, she has no future. If she loses to the protagonist, the tags I stated at the beginning would happen to her forever. And if she wins against the protagonist, she'd fall to the final boss and would still be, she'd become a baby soldier-making machine. Ursula is terrified and by all means should divert the original story. The captain then calls for her attention, then informs her that they're about to reach Ordos. She needs to come up with a plan before arriving at Ordos on how to escape her predicament and live peacefully on her own. Then sees something. They are already nearing the capital of the Ishanger tribe called Ordos. One of the guards spotted something. Dust of smoke in the distance. And see the flag that indicates the Black Wolf insignia. The guard ordered the others to open the gates immediately and shouts that Lady Ishanger Ursula has returned. The gates open and orders everyone to bow their heads to show their respects to Lady Ishanger Ursula. She then thinks about the perks she has being a chieftain's daughter and how she's getting special treatment. Ursula observes the buildings and infrastructures around and thinks that it's straight out of the Middle Ages, and also thinks that it's one of those typical evil tribe village that would be destroyed in the end. Captain Johann then asks Ursula if she's going to see Lord Sirkin immediately. She asks if there's any problem with that. Johann got terrified at her gaze and immediately says no, and says that if it's Lady Ursula, Lord Sirkin won't mind. And she also thinks that he'd better not, and see that she's getting nervous about it. A guard then called for Lord Sirkin, and informs the Lord that Lady Ishanger Ursula has returned and wants to see him. He puts down the cup, then menacingly says her daughter's name. And that is the end of chapter 4. The story continues with Ursula and Johann walking towards her father's residence. Ursula created a plan, and that is to convince the tribal chief Sirkin, which is his father, to legally allow her to leave here and naturalize into the West in an empire called Karos. She decided to do that instead of running away, because if she did, the tribe would brand her as a fugitive and live her whole life on the run. The attendant's bows then greets Lord Sirkin and informs him that Lady Ishanger Ursula requests an audience. And with that, the chief approved of her presence. Ursula opens the door, gives herself one final check, then walks inside. We then see the chief, or the king of the Kahar Empire, Ishanger Sirkin. He has an overwhelming presence that Ursula started to sweat. Her father starts the conversation. He tells her that it's been 3 months, and he heard that she have been swinging her sword around, claiming that she's the greatest. And now she's even the one to seek him out first. Ursula started shaking and tries to say something, then nervously apologizes to her father. He got confused by her words. He then asks why she's apologizing to him and calling him father, and asks what she's scheming. Ursula then realized that the two aren't on good terms. And in the game, Ursula was the final boss in the eastern regions, and asks herself if something must have happened that's not told in the game. Lord Sirkin puts down the cup, and says since she's not here to ask about his well-being, she should then state her business. Ursula looks down then says she intends to go to the Empire in the West. His father asks to repeat what she told because he thought he might have heard what she said wrong. Ursula then looks up to his father, then asks for his permission to go to the Karos Empire in the West. His father then asks if she wishes to commit log out on life. He understands that she may want to see her mother's homeland, but she should know by now that they, the barbarians, are seen as nothing but beasts, and asks if she, a half-blood, thinks that they would treat her differently. The conversation isn't going very well. She thinks if she should really then go with the story of the game and destroy the Empire first and deal with the Demon King. She'll have an uncertain future and the punishment is going to be bad. And lastly, she can't fight like the original Ursula. She finally made up her mind, then proclaims that she's going to conquer the Karos Empire. Lord Sirkin's eyes twitch, then puts down the cup. then menacingly tells her that's not something to be said lightly. Ursula started shaking and questions why the atmosphere became tense. But she isn't backing down and tells him that it's the reason why she's asking permission to go to the Empire. His father got stunned. And Ursula again says that by living there, she would conquer the Kairos Empire. His father then says that their own kingdom called Kahar Empire, with powerful warriors and excellent cavalry skills, have claimed large territories. But right now, they're having trouble conquering the Western Empire. Because every time they try to venture in those plains, the people there would immediately attack. Ursula then replies that then the only solution to that is to deceive them. His father got surprised and confused with her plan. Ursula explains that there is an institution called Remnant Academy, and it's an institution aiming to nurture young talents into warriors. She says that generally only imperial citizens can enroll, but they can use this special admission system. We then learn about the special admission system. Since this is a game with a fantasy world setting, various characters and different races from different nationalities appear in the academy. And most of these characters who are foreigners in the Kairos Empire can get enrolled through the special admission system. Other nations that are friendly with the Kairos Empire are allowed to enter and train their future talents there to make them better. But that's just the outside perspective. Because in reality, they can be also used as hostages if the friendly nations would become their enemies. Ursula then explains to his father that if they vow that they will not invade the empire and she would become a hostage to them, they would also stop invading them. His father is still confused and says that it doesn't make any sense. Why is she thinking that the Kairos Empire would just leave them be and would be confident that their empire will stop trying to invade them just because of her? And if it's him, he'd just ignore and behead any peace diplomats that would come. But Ursula is confident that it won't happen, since she's Princess Aishanger of the Kahar Empire. His father smirked, then tells her that if she dies in the Kairos Empire, that just prove her foolishness. And he won't send any warriors to avenge her. Ursula then confirmed that he really doesn't have any care for her. She says that they won't do anything bad to her in the Kairos Empire. Because unlike them, if royalties in the West would be unconsentingly be put to rest, the people would immediately wage a war. His father asks if Aimila told her all this as well, because she seems well informed about the Kairos Empire even though she never visited. His father then asks one final question. She's suggesting that he should vow a peace treaty to the Empire. Does she really think he would agree that he would end his conquest here? She replies that isn't it a better time to attack the Empire? He got confused and asks that wouldn't they promise to stop the war? But she just replies that have they ever kept their promises? She says that she'll be in the Remnant Academy for 3 years. And after 3 years, by that time, she would have already conquered the West and will be marching back here in Kahar Empire. His father then laughs loudly, which startled her. He says that the wolf who bite can now act like a snake. He finally agrees with her plan and grants her permission to do as she pleases, but warns her to hurry, because she wouldn't want a war to break out before she graduates and they will do bad stuff to her as the hostage. She tells him to not worry, because this snake will succeed in betraying, and in her mind, she shouts that she can finally escape this place. After that, we see that she's taking a bath. Oh, you fan service. She exhales because all the stress she's accumulated since coming here is like vanishing away. She guesses that the original Ursula had been out constantly on either expedition or raids, because she couldn't even wash off the mud and blood properly. Stinky. She then got reminded about the horror she saw the first time she got here. She clenches her hand and curses those barbarians, but tells herself to stop worrying about that now since she won't be seeing them again. She then promises that once she establishes herself at the academy, she'll expose the dangers these lunatics pose and assemble a subjugation force. Then looks at the window and thinks that it's been a week since she became Ursula. She wonders what may have happened to the real him in her other life. She questions if she actually switched bodies with Ursula or did she just pass away drunk that time. She also questions what would happen if she were to pass away here, and even asks if there's a way to go back. She looks at her own reflection. And comparing to her one-legged reality, her body in this world is 1,000 times better. Plus, right now she's a hot, beautiful maiden. Somebody then called out to her, which made her jump up. Then tells her that the equipment she commissioned before the last expedition has been completed. She wonders what those equipments are. After a while, she came out wearing a robe. The attendant bows her head down, then says that these are the gauntlet that are crafted from the scales of the silver serpent of the Frost Canyon that she has hunted last time. And since the materials are so rare and difficult to work with, they can only make one and not for both arms. She then got surprised when the attendant finally opened the box and looked at it. And it's something that she recognizes. We then see the gameplay. The protagonist tries to deflect what was thrown towards him. And he succeeded, but was pushed back. Hercella compliments him that he's quite sturdy, but questions if this is really the best he can do for a guy who claims to want to save the world. He then looks at her and see that there's a sword and arrows inside her, and got terrified because she's still standing there without a care with those severe wounds. He now knows why people call her Hercella the Mad, but is still not giving up and clenches his teeth. As he powers up his sword, he shouts Hercella's name, but Hercella just mocks him back. He then screams that he would not lose to a devil like her. So, in summary, it's the main weapon that Hercella uses every battle. As she's appreciating the craftsmanship of the weapon, she feels something weird. The attendant asks if there's something she finds unsatisfactory about the weapon. She tells her none, but she feels something. She wonders why the armor feels subtly chilly, like her hand got dipped in ice water. She removes the gauntlet and thinks that it's maybe because of the silver serpent of the Frost Canyon material they used. As she's putting the gauntlet back at the box, the attendant was curious of something, then asks when she'll depart to go to the Empire. She thinks that the rumor of her going there has already spread within the walls of the castle. Then again, it really is a major news, since she's a direct descendant of Ishanger that would willingly become a hostage to the enemy empire. She tells the attendant that she's planning to leave by tomorrow night, then asks her to pack some essentials and her belongings. The attendant follows her order and would inform the others accordingly. After that, it's already the next day or night, and they already departed and are camping near the Empire's border. Johann tells her that if they're going to continue about half a day from here, they would reach the Karos Empire's borders. But Johann is still worried about her. He acknowledges that she's capable but still tries to dissuade her from doing it. Hercella got surprised that he is worried about her. She thinks that among Hercella's subordinates, Johann was one of the closest ones. She smiles, then thinks that it's been a while since she felt camaraderie. Hercella replies to him to not worry, and asks what could the weaklings of the Empire could possibly do to her. She got surrounded. She became nervous. The Karos Empire. In the distant past, humans being led by 12 knights have conquered 5 other kingdoms. They expelled all other races and made the center of the continent a land for humans. It's the strongest nation in the game where the protagonist belongs. But even though it's called the strongest, they are actually having troubles. The beastmen of the northern snowy plains, and the other is the eastern Kahar Empire where she lives. And the empire was actually struggling to the Kahar's barbarian warriors that they were forced to build an immense wall. And that wall is called the Great Wall of Virginia. We're back to her being surrounded. She's grabbing that white thing on her waist, then waves it around, then tells the soldiers that she didn't come here to fight, and came here to deliver a letter. The soldiers looked at each other confusingly, then speaks in a foreign language. She then got disappointed because all the efforts she did to avoid her fate would be gone just because of the language barrier. Someone then pointed a staff towards her and hear the man chanting a spell. Then she suddenly felt something. She goes down, becoming dizzy. Then thinks that did they do a mind control spell on her? But then someone asks if she can finally understand them, calling her barbarian. She stands back up and became happy because now they can understand each other. She then tries to intimidate them, asking how dare make one of children of Sirkin in this state. Then got surprised. Then asks why she speaks like one of those crappy machine translation. The wizard who did the spell tells her to stop complaining, then wonders what's even a machine translation. The captain of the guards changes the topic, then questions if she's really is an offspring of Sirkin. Then asks if she's a direct descendant. Hercella confirms it. Then introduces herself as Aishanger Hercella. The captain got stunned and repeats her name Hercella. He then says she's that woman who unconsentingly make men relieved by Snusnu, which made her instantly pull out her sword. Then angrily asks him what did he just said. The guard is scared, but is still calm even though his next words might be his and the people beside him their last airtime. The guard apologized for insulting her. The guard in the back also got surprised she's Hercella and wants to try the Snusna thing, but their captain shouts to stop because she can seriously do that to everyone in an instant. He again apologized and asks her nicely to put her sword down. She puts her sword back in her scabbard, lets him go and tells him that he's lucky. The captain of the guard then addresses her formally as Princess of Kahar, then asks why did she came here alone. Hercella brings out a scroll. Then tells the guard that she brought a letter from the king, her father, and says they seek peace. But the captain is doubting it. She then continues that as a proof of their peace treaty, she would enroll to their remnant academy for the special admission, which surprised the captain. We then see the inside of the city, and see that Hercella was finally let in and was led to a man named Margrave Ludwig. The Margrave thanks the captain for his services, then turns around and says he heard the gist of the story, saying her full name Princess Aishanger Hercella, but won't formally welcome her because he still considers her as his enemy. But Hercella isn't paying attention to his yapping. Hercella asks what is he smoking. The Margrave says it's a manna herb and got surprised it intrigued her. Then realized this may really be the first time she saw this because these manna herbs don't grow in the east. He looks back at Hercella and see that she's amazed and drooling. The Margrave then said the Kier's meme with Hercella excitedly nodding her head. After a while we see some smoke. And it came from Hercella saying that it's pretty good. She says that it's like cigarette but has legit benefits like sharpening the senses and clears the mind, plus it's far less addicting and most importantly, it doesn't harm the body. The Margrave came back and see that she really likes it. He sat down opposite to her and says he'd give her a pack as a gift. But before that, he asks her to not lie to him about the peace agreement and the letter of treaty that she said. He tells her that it's obvious that it's a ploy to conquer the empire. Hercella got surprised and wonders how did he know. The Margrave says that she came here out of the blue proposing peace with no reason and purpose. So, it's obvious that there's gonna be some kind of ulterior motive that would benefit Kahar. She's stunned they already figured her out, and thinks to herself that she doesn't want to go back to the Kahar Empire. She says to the Margrave that she wants to say something important and prefers that they'd only talk one-on-one. The Margrave accepts her proposal and with that the guard left them alone. With the guard gone, they start their conversation. She agrees with his conclusion that the peace treaty was just a facade. She confesses that her father Sirkin would still continue to conquer their empire. He's going to gather the whole army and will attack the Karos Empire with an unsuspecting surprise attack. The Margrave asks why is she confessing now, and says that his father would become very furious seeing her not even trying to lie her way out. But Hercella says that she never considered him as his father, because he forced her mother who is from this empire. The Margrave got curious by what she said, because he never knew that her mother was from this empire, which also answers why she's different from other barbarians. He then asks what was her mother's name. Imela. Hercella says she doesn't know her family name and only know that she has a blonde hair and blue eyes. The Margrave is intrigued but sets his curiosity aside and wants to talk about the main topic. If the Empire accepts the peace negotiation, they will stop attacking the barbarians. And they would not use this as a chance to attack them unsuspectingly because it would only tarnish the honor of their empire. Plus, they know they can't have an all-out war with the Kahar Empire's army beyond the border. Hercella interjects and says that if they would accept her in their empire, she in return promises to aid them in the future. And refusing the peace treaty won't stop the Kahar Empire's invasion anyway. The Margrave questions as to why she would turn her back to her own nation. And if she says she just wants to take revenge, she didn't need to come in here because the only one she hates is his father. She came up with a quick made-up answer and says that he's right, but reasons that the internal atmosphere lately has been tense, and says that if she stayed, she wouldn't have survived much longer. So, she says she came here as a way to escape, and whatever happens here, it's better than dying. The Margrave says that Kahar warriors would rather sue her and slide themselves rather than flee. But Hercella reminds him again that she's a Halfie. She's not like the other barbarians. The Margrave laughs, then finally accepts her proposal and would support the peace treaty. He then calls for someone to come in. Then a person with an armor started walking towards them. Hercella turns her back and got curious as to who he had called. Woman. 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 Cute woman wearing an armor. The story continues with the female knight bowing down and formally greeting Hercella and introducing herself as Nigel, a warrior knight of Landenberg. The Margrave says that she would become her attendant and would serve her from now on. He also boasts that she's one of his best knights and assures Hercella that she is more than enough to serve as her escort. But Hercella knew that he only did this so that they can keep a close eye on her. But even then, she also actually needs someone to guide and help her in this place. Since he now decided to help her and would kinda act as his guardian, she should now also do what she promised and cooperate with them in a few matters. The Margrave first says that he would handle all the paperwork about the special admission system in the Remnant Academy. But the peace negotiation can only be approved by the Emperor. So when he would report this matter to His Majesty, she will come with him to act as a witness and testify about the dangers of the Kahar Empire. Hercella questions if that's all. The Margrave replies that there's one last thing that she should do, and that is to not cause any trouble within the Empire. She understands why the Margrave would say that. She can't promise it, but replies that she would try her best. After the meeting, Hercella stretches. She thinks about how she managed to fool the Margrave and his father and thinks that she feels like she's getting better at lying after becoming Hercella. She then looks at the reflection in the window and sees her new attendant. She calls for her attention and asks if she should call her Ms. Nigel. Ms. Nigel then calls her Princess Aishanger and says that it feels too formal to call her Ms. since she's just her attendant and requests to just call her Nigel. Hercella also replies to just call her Hercella since Aishanger is a name that might terrify the people outside and to drop the princess because she wants her to talk to her normally. Nigel accepts but calls her Lady Hercella. Hercella then asks how long would she be her attendant. Is it up until she enters the academy? Nigel replies that she doesn't know. She'll be her attendant until the Margrave calls her back, so she would continue to serve her even when she's at the academy. Hercella looks at her closely. Nigel avoids eye contact while Hercella looks at her top to bottom. Luckily, this is more a harem type and not a shoujo, so she got a cute attendant and not some frail cute boy type. Hercella asks if the Margrave requested anything else from her. Nigel confirms it and says that she needs to have a sparring match with her. Hercella questions why a sparring match. They moved outside. Nigel says that even though it's a special admission, she still needs to have talent to enter the Remnant Academy. She's well known in this empire as a very, very strong warrior that can take on many, many men. But the Margrave still ordered her to verify it. Hercella asks if it's fine to spar here since they might cause nuisance to the other knights. Nigel assures her that it's fine since this training ground is for the Margrave and his children only. And the Margrave has given them permission to use this place, so there's no need to worry. Hercella asks where the children of the Margrave are, since it's pretty quiet since she came here, and wishes to meet them, but Nigel says that all the children of the Margrave has been isekai'd. Hercella apologizes for saying all those things earlier. Nigel says that it's fine since she doesn't know, but says that she should avoid mentioning it in front of the Margrave. Nigel pulls out her sword and formally introduces herself as the 10th sword of the Landenberg and the shield of the Empire. And with the start of their spar, she instantly dashes towards Hercella at lightning speed. Hercella's instinct came in clutch and immediately blocks her sword. She got surprised by how fast that was, and the looks Nigel's giving right now is a scary look, like she's trying to forcefully unsubscribe her from life. Nigel then went in with a knee and got Hercella clean. Then went in with a downward poke. Spurt, squirt sound effect. Hercella managed to not get her head poked, but still got caught in the neck. She's scared and shaking because she barely dodged it. We then see her with the laser eyes thing but blue and questions as to why she suddenly wants to make her sleep forever. Nigel says that she's different from what she heard and asks if she's not serious in clashing with her. Hercella thinks that she isn't good with swords or any close combat weapons back then because she mainly uses the bang 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 thing. But right now, she is Hercella, and Hercella isn't the type of person that would surrender and act weak. Hercella says she's barely using 1% of her power right now, so they should continue because now she'll use 2%. Nigel again dashes towards Hercella. Hercella again barely managed to defend herself with her letting out a girl sound. Nigel continues her strike, but not landing any hit. But Hercella is struggling and is scared as feathers, and thinks that her acting all confident might have been too much. Nigel compliments her for her quick reaction time. But Nigel again goes in with a knee and slides to Hercella's side, and with her back exposed. Thankfully this time, it's a poke with the back of her sword. But then Hercella countered and kicked Nigel in the stomach. She went flying, coming in close contact to the walls. Nigel is confused, because Hercella should have been knocked to sleep. I can't show Hercella because the big red man said that it hated the liquid red, but imagine the liquid red flowing in her face with eyes that can take someone's life, making her hot and scary. Nigel notices that her aura is different and questions if she's now going to take it seriously. She pulls out her spear, and this time she'll now become serious. With both of them having the laser eyes, they get ready, and both dash towards each other, making the area dusty. They continued to exchange blows, and Hercella is smiling, because for some reason it feels like she's doing it. But she's not an M like darkness. She feels good hurting people not receiving it, to the point where someone started whispering to her ear saying more, to show her 100% full power, and to use the gauntlet. The whispering entity keeps repeating it with its voice getting louder and louder. She'll make quick work of her opponent even though Nigel is giving everything. But Hercella is snapped back to reality, and see the repeat poke to the head move from Nigel. And this time she fully dodged, and countered with a wide slash, but Nigel also dodged. And so they continued to spar. And in the next scene, the Margrave is angry, because both of them were bedridden. He asks why did they fight to this extent. The Margrave only asks for a light spar to get to know each other more, but they went all out with even real swords. Nigel speaks up first and says that she was the one that suggested in using real swords. The Margrave got surprised because this isn't like her. Nigel read in a book that the warriors in the Kahar Empire will always fight like their lives depends on it, even in training. So, to show respect to Hercella, they used real swords, and she went all out even though it's just sparring. The Margrave questions as to what book that was because there might be even more false information about the barbarians. Nigel is dumbfounded and asks if it's not true. The Margrave started to berate Nigel for always being gullible. Hercella then realized that Nigel isn't really feeling animosity towards her, and only did that because of just that one book she read. She got angry and clenches her fist tight. And with that, Nigel repeatedly apologized to Hercella through the night. After some time, Hercella is still up. The very first day she came here in the Empire was spent fighting like her life depended on it and ending up bedridden for probably days. She then turns her head towards Nigel, and got reminded about what Nigel said, still needing to have skills to get accepted in the Remnant Academy. Hercella realized that today, in order to survive in this world, she needs more fighting experience, and at least have enough strength to be on par with Nigel. She falls asleep thinking that she needs more power. Then the real baddie Hercella shows up, and tells her she would have instantly ended Nigel's career if she followed her order and had brought out the gauntlet. After a couple of days in the Karos Empire, a priest is healing Ursula and says that her wounds are almost healed. And except for her severely injured leg and shoulder, they can now remove the bandages. But warns her to not do things like that one girl over there. Damn, every time I see a strong woman, I always get reminded of the time Rudius knocked on Ghislaine's cheeks. Ursula is amazed by how fast she recovered, with Ursula asking if all the Imperial Knights are all like her. The priest says that Nigel is always like this, with her always trying to stop her from exerting force because her bones aren't even fully healed yet. But got tired of worrying, so she's just leaving her be. Ursula then got reminded of her military days. People like her aren't bad characters, but just stubbornly and ignorantly principled. Nigel finished her workout and asks how she's feeling. Ursula replies that she can now somewhat walk and getting better compared to the vegetable state they were in a couple of days ago. Nigel then looks at her curiously and wants to ask something, but apologizes in advance because it feels like it might be disrespectful. Ursula just says to spit it out since it might be something similar to the respectful sparring she believed that costed them injuries. Nigel became embarrassed and reasons out that she just wants her to feel comfortable here. And going back to the topic, Nigel asks as to where she learned the Imperial swordsmanship. But Ursula is just clueless as to what she's asking. Nigel says that she might not remember it, but she saw it clearly during their sparring session. And despite being clumsy, she recognizes the basic defensive stance, and she occasionally used refined sword techniques that's different from Kahar's beast-like fighting style. And from a distance people would probably see it as the Imperial swordsmanship. Ursula's still confused, just points at herself and asks if she really did it. She then reasons that she doesn't remember it well and have never even heard of Imperial swordsmanship, and maybe she just picked it up a bit by clashing with her. She thinks that what she said is partially true because she really can't remember what happened half of their sparring. Nigel accepts her answer and says that Imperial swordsmanship is not a simple technique that can just be picked up from seeing it once. And if what she's saying is true, she says that she has a talent for Imperial swordsmanship. Ursula says that maybe she should learn it then, and asks if they will teach it at Remnant Academy. But Nigel says that she can teach her if she wants. She'll just get permission from the Margrave first, even though he would most likely won't oppose to that idea. But the first thing she needs to teach her is the Imperial language, since she's still using that awful translation magic. The next day, Nigel is teaching Ursula how to speak properly. Ursula, on the other hand, is all drained and thinks that even in this world she ended up studying a foreign language. And well, at least it's not multiple languages like back then. The Margrave then came in and interrupted their study session, and says that there's already a decision on the peace treaty without her needing to go to the kingdom. But unfortunately, the peace treaty and even her staying here have all been denied. Ursula and the Margrave then have a one-on-one serious talk again. Ursula speaks first and asks why didn't they accept the peace treaty? Shouldn't they accept it and start preparing too, or are they actually planning on fighting Kahar? The Margrave looks down and denies it. He reasons that 40% of the nobles are opposed to the peace treaty. They say that they find it difficult to trust that the Kahar Empire wants peace. Ursula is confused and asks if he fully explained about Kahar Empire's definite invasion. The Margrave says that the information of Kahar's invasion was only shared with the Emperor and a few high-ranking nobles. Because if the news of an invasion were to be spread publicly, the entire empire would start a panic. And lastly, one of the main problem is her, which made Ursula puzzled. The Margrave says that her reputation is far worse than he expected, and asks how many people's lives have she took. She's a very notorious person known to have no mercy and mass dispatch people. Ursula tries to say something, but the Margrave cuts her off because the nobles would not listen and believe in any reasoning she'll say. The nobles are very scared, and them believing she's bad news is comparable to their faith in religion. Ursula is frustrated and asks if they want her to go back then. She's scared because if she goes back after finally coming this far, she'd be forced to close her eyes forever for sure. But then the Margrave shows her a paper and says that they made some unreasonable conditions to accept the peace treaty and for her to continue to stay here. Hercella looks at it for a moment, then informs the Margrave that she still can't read, which he apologized. And with that, the Margrave took back the paper and would summarize the contract for her. The first condition is that she shouldn't cause trouble within the Empire or any other races. Second is for her to agree to be arrested and punished according to the Kairos Empire laws if she ever committed any crimes in the future. Third is to agree to join the Kairos Empire's army if the Kahar Empire attacks. And fourth is that after graduating from the Remnant Academy, she'll serve for their empire for 5 years and join the Kairos Empire army. The fifth one is for the Margrave, so he's just going to skip it. And lastly, if she shows any intention of returning to her own empire during her stay here, she'd be considered as a spy and would be immediately arrested. Hercella asks if that's all, and asks why he's talking like there's some kind of bad things she needs to comply to stay here. The Margrave gives a smile and says that he just wants to see her flustered. Her anxiety became anger and asks if he's just messing with her. The Margrave tells her to calm down and says that the things he told her in the beginning are all true, and reminds her again that the Kairos Empire is wary of her. Hercella says that she'd do her best and would follow those rules. The Margrave stands up since their conversation is finished, and now he fully welcomes her to the Kairos Empire. And they shook hands. At sunset, the captain of the guards came and tells the Margrave that he heard the news, and asks why did he agree to the fifth condition, to become the guardian of that scary princess barbarian. He just tells him that he's her last hope. The guard questions what he's talking about. The Margrave at first was annoyed and was going to end her the first time she came here. But after hearing that she despised her own empire so much that she came all the way here, he changed his mind. And most importantly, she hates his father Sirkin. The Margrave is frustrated he'll never have the power to end that man, but now he has the chance to see the day where he'll be torn to pieces, and what's better is that it's done by her own daughter. And that's where we'll end for now. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to get notified when the next part comes out. Love your father. Bye bye.